I am currently facing life in prison in a foreign country. And if you've been following my account over the past year, you know that I was framed for a drug crime in a foreign country by my ex-boyfriend.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is the story of a black woman who is being framed by a boyfriend in South Korea for a crime that she didn't commit. Let's just listen to our story together.
I've had dreams to move overseas for probably 5+ years. For the last 5 years of my life, I quite literally, if you know me, if you're close to me, you know that I have always dreamt of living overseas. That has always been one thing that I've always said that I wanted to do. And I always said I want to do it for at least a year. I just want to go overseas. I want to try it out. I want to experience life outside of America. So this was a dream that I had set, and it was in my 5-year plan. And I hit that mark right at the end of my 5-year plan. So I quite literally had someone in my life at that time who was there to cause a complete detour and a complete distraction. I had someone there who wanted my life and would stop at nothing to make sure that I no longer had my life. The life that I've been working hard for most of my life. So yeah, we're really going to get into the spiritual aspects, everything. There's just so many components of this story, and I can't just jump into this is what happened overseas. No, we got to go into what really happened and how we even got to the point of someone being able to frame me for drug smuggling in a foreign country. My intuition has been screaming at me to start this freaking story time, and I have to stop ignoring it at this point. But before we get into what's currently happening and what went on in court, what went on when I got to said foreign country, we need to go backwards, and we need to talk about everything that I missed in my relationship with a narcissist and a sociopath, and someone who quite literally wanted to steal my life from me. At the end of the day, if I can help two people who are currently in a relationship with a narcissist, or who are currently going through some of the situations that I've gone through, and when I tell you, from physical abuse to sexual abuse to emotional abuse to verbal abuse, everything in the last 2 years, I've quite literally been through it all. And if I can help someone through the situation or out of the toxic situation that they are currently in, this stuff is real, man. And someone quite literally tried to take my life from me, in the physical sense and in a literal sense, if that makes sense. But yeah, let's get started with this story time. But like I said, we're going backwards. So it's going to be a season 1 and a season 2. This season 1 is pretty much everything that I missed from start to finish that I can think of right now in this moment. Let's go. So if you watched my last video, you know by now that I am currently facing life in prison in a foreign country because I was framed. But as I said, there will be a season 1 and a season 2 to this story. So right now what we're going to do is kind of go backwards in the story so I can tell you all every freaking red flag, every sign, everything I missed in my relationship with a narcissist and a sociopath, and probably a psychopath. I don't know if he's a sociopath or a psychopath, but definitely one of them. So I can tell you everything I missed. So let's get started from the beginning. So in the beginning, everything was great. So I thought. But little did I know, I was being love bombed. And honestly, I feel like the type of person I am, I feel like when someone love bombs me, I'm just kind of like, I deserve that. Like, I deserve to be showered in the very beginning, you know? And that's probably not the best way to go about life. Now that I can look back at this situation, probably not the best way to go about life. So in the beginning, everything was great. So I thought, I had my job. He worked for my ex, my narcissistic ex, worked for the mayor. And we're going to get into why that's so crazy, but we're not there yet. When I met him, I actually met him out with his coworkers. And so, you know, I was like paying attention to how they were interacting. It seemed like the energy was good. The atmosphere was good. They weren't like giving him any like looks, like anything that I could notice to make me think like, he's not really liked in the office. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, you know, a little rough around the edges, but he seemed cool. He works for the mayor. You know, in the beginning, he told me that he made $125,000 a year. I was like, okay. That turned out to be a lie. But I was just like, okay. And I'm thinking, you know, he works for the mayor he works for one of the largest mayors in the country. I'm thinking my background check is mostly done. Do I still do a small little background check? Yes, but I didn't go too much into detail as I usually would with background checks because I'm thinking this person works for the mayor. The background check is done. And the way he tells it, he said that he was working for the mayor for over a year, blase, blah, blah. He was working for DC government for a few years prior, blase, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. Cool. Anyway, come to find out all of that was a lie. He had only been employed with the mayor's office for a few months and had never worked for DC government prior. So here we are to the very first red flag I missed. When I first met this man, he wanted to be around me 24/7. All the time. I mean, if I was on lunch break for work, he was pulling up to my job, like, come on, let's go out to lunch, like, blah, blah, blah. And from our very first interaction, he knew that my job at the time was pretty stressful for me. Because I literally met him at happy hour while I was decompressing from my job. So it did come up the first time we met. Going back, I probably would not divulge information like that to a stranger. But he would be like, oh, come on, like, let's go out. Like, I'm gonna get you lunch. Like, come on, let's go eat. Like, blah, 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 blah. Like, after I would get off work, he'd be like, oh, I'm gonna come meet you somewhere. Let's go out to dinner. Like, you know, like, I mean, he quite literally wanted to take up all of my free time. And because of the place that I was in at that time, I didn't mind it. But any other time that would probably be, or that would have probably been a red flag for me. It just wasn't a red flag in that moment. So outside of everything else, I think him working at the mayor's office is what really kind of got him in with me. And then we would go to the mayor's events, or we would go to events around the city where the mayor's staff had to be present. Like one of the dates we went to a baseball game, and we were in the mayor's box seats at this baseball game. And I know that to be true because when the lady checked our tickets, they were like, oh, you're in the mayor's box. And we were like, yeah. And, you know, we went on to the mayor's box. So I knew that to be true. And in the beginning, he was introducing me to things in DC that I had not been introduced to as an adult. So I was just really kind of out enjoying life, having a good time, and wasn't really thinking too much of it. So yeah, the first major red flag that I missed was him wanting to be pretty much in my skin every second. And the crazy thing about this, the crazy thing about that and allowing that to happen is that I had literally just cut off a friend right before I met him, probably like within the same month, like I cut her off and then met him. I cut off a friend right before I met him because I had noticed that she had wanted to be around me too much. There were other things in that went into play, just kind of like her wanting to be in my skin, watching me so closely, always wanting to know what I'm doing, always wanting to know where I'm at, always wanting to like know what, like, how do I do this? How do I get this job? How do I do my business? How do I da 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 da? So I literally just cut off a friend, and then for this person to come in and then to be like trying to be like literally in my skin every second, it was just it takes me back when I look at it that way. And I don't really want to go into detail about my friend because the story is not about her, but they have a lot of parallels. Once we get into this story, they have a lot of parallels. For me to have gotten rid of her and then him to come right in, that's insane. So in the beginning, another one of the first major red flags that I missed, this is the very beginning of our relationship too. And I had went on vacation to California. I went on a girls trip, and we went for, I think, the weekend, but I had planned to stay for a few days after that. I don't remember how many days that we were all staying, but I had planned to stay for a few days after, just by myself. So the last day that I was there with my friends and when I was branching off to be by myself in LA, he calls me hysterically crying, like hysterically crying. And his brother had just passed away in Virginia, and he's like boo-hoo crying, like, I can't believe this happened. His brother was like shot or killed. I can't really remember, but he calls me like hysterically crying and like, oh my God, da, 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 and like doing all the theatrics on the phone. And so I made the decision to go home from California early. I battled with myself in that moment to not do that because this man is really not that freaking important. And I wish, like, looking back on it, that I never did do that, because I think that let him know right there. That was a test on his end, like a narcissistic test. And it was a narcissistic test that I failed miserably. Looking back at it, I don't think that there was ever anyone who passed away. He never talked about it afterwards. He may have talked about that for a week. And one time I actually brought it up, like, he never went to the funeral. Like, for him to be that hysterical, did not go to the funeral. And the one time I brought it up, he looked at me like a deer in the headlights. Like, he did not know what I was talking about his brother passing away. And his brother in the sense of a really close friend that he grew up with. Never heard of that person again. He never brought him up like, oh man, I miss my brother. Remember I told you my brother passed away? Never brought that person up again. So I'm like 100% sure. I'll give it 99% sure that no one ever passed away. And it was a lie. Either way, it was a test for me to come home from my trip early because I could not be on vacation without him. And that was the first test to see how much he could control my life.
Wow. I find this really, really interesting. And I cannot say that I know the kind of trauma that this lady is going through. But then, guys, if you want to see more episodes and more parts of this story, please subscribe and like this video. We're going to see you guys on the second part. You guys have not heard anything that she has to say. Thanks for watching.